Hello and welcome to another episode of Just Jets. Here I am Matt O'Leary, excited to get into episode number 262, hanging out with you. Hey, that rhymed. Today we're going to get into some Jets contract extension talk. It's NFL Combine week. Yesterday we reacted to the Darren Muji and Aaron Glenn press conferences. I got contracts on the brain, press conferences. So if you missed that, make sure to head over to the YouTube channel where you can get that. Today, I want to get into some contract extension talk and your voicemails. The reason why I think it's an appropriate time to talk some contract extensions is because at the NFL Combine, which happens this week, it's kind of the unofficial start of the new league year. Yes, it doesn't technically begin for another little bit, but you get everyone in the NFL, all the teams at one place, and this is where a lot of rumors start to begin circulating, and sometimes you will see contract extensions become a part of that. Daniel Jeremiah, who is an NFL insider, tweeted out earlier this week that he would expect to see a ton of extensions over the next 7 to 10 days. So we're in the midst of that window right now. And we did see yesterday the Bills extended their wide receiver Khalil Shakir. And just, again, pointing it out that at the NFL Combine, this is usually where we get to see some trades, some free agency, tampering, some rumors start to come out of it. And it's because you have everybody in the NFL all in one place getting together. So there are two players that I think come to mind when talking contract extension, and that's Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson. And you had Sauce Gardner tweet out earlier in the week that he wants to be a Jet for life and that he's open to a contract extension and wants a contract extension with the New York Jets. I've also made it pretty clear my stance on where I think the Jets should go on the Garrett Wilson front and that he is likely due a contract extension rather than a trade. So let's talk through those two guys and what I think they are likely to get and how I came up with those numbers. So let's start with Garrett Wilson here. Wide receiver, 3 years in the league, 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons. I think you're looking at roughly 4 years, $120 million contract, which is a $30 million AAV deal. And my comp was the Amon-Ra St. Brown contract. Now, Amon-Ra got a touch more. I believe his AAV is like $30.01 million. I'll pull that up right now while we'll talk about it. So he got just a touch more. It would not be the highest paid wide receiver in the year by AAV. But if you look at it, you have Amon-Ra St. Brown got 120 million and 10, right? So his average is 30.0025 million per year. Brandon Ayuk got 4 for 120. AJ Brown got a shorter term deal, but his AAV is 32 million. CeeDee Lamb AAV 34 million, and Justin Jefferson all the way up at $35 million. Now, Amon-Ra had a bigger year 3 than Garrett Wilson did. So I don't know if that plays a factor, but a number 1 receiver is a number 1 receiver for your team, right? In year number 3, he had 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns. Garrett Wilson didn't have 1,500 yards. He had 1,100 this past year. So that's obviously a little bit of a difference between the two. He had 1,107 touchdowns. Again, 3 straight years over 1,000 yards for him. He is 24 years old. He turns 25 in July. He's entering his prime. You know, the wide receiver's prime usually goes through like their late 20s. Sometimes if you're an outlier, you could have success into your 30s. We've seen guys recently, DeAndre Hopkins, a wide receiver who's lasted well into his 30s. But for Garrett, you can't really ask for too much more out of his first 3 years in the league. And that's a player that I've picked out that I would like to build around if I'm the New York Jets. I think his play on the field warrants a contract extension, number 1. And number 2, I think his attitude and how he handles himself off the field, like that's how I want all my 53 guys on the roster to be like. I think he's well-spoken, very humble. hates losing, wants to win at all costs. That's the guy that I want on my team. And Garrett Wilson, again, to me, that seems like an absolute no-brainer. I think that one can and should get done. The one that I think is up a little bit more for debate is Sauce Gardner. Now, you would be paying him after a down year. Year 3 was not to his normal standard. Now, I do think he got a little over-criticized a year ago. Yes, there were legitimate tackling concerns from him and effort concerns, but I think for the most part, he was playing as a plus starter. That doesn't mean that he was an all-pro or elite, because he wasn't. I think he'd be the first one to tell you that. But you can't discount the first 2 years that we saw in the league from Sauce Gardner, where he and Pat Surtain were the two best corners in the NFL. And I would say, based on the last year, yeah, Pat Surtain is obviously a guy who got paid a significant chunk of money and deserves it, because I think he last year was the best corner in the NFL. He was the defensive player of the year this past year, just stellar numbers. But I think that's the kind of contract that you'd be looking at for a Sauce Gardner if you were to give it to him. I know that there's some who maybe don't want to go down that route because of the year that he just had and you want to prove it one more year before that. But regardless, Surtain got 4 years for $96 million, which is $24 million AAV. The highest paid corner in the NFL is Jalen Ramsey at $24.1 million. Ramsey's older now at 31 years old. But for Sauce, I think you're looking at right around $100 million. I split the difference between $100 million and Pat Surtain's 96. And I went with 4 for 98, which is $24.5 million AAV. That by AAV, that would make Sauce Gardner the highest paid corner in the NFL. Now, in total value, Denzel Ward got a $100.5 million contract. That's a few years ago now that he signed that deal in 2022. His was a 5-year deal, so a $20.1 million deal. If you're tacking on a 5th year for Sauce Gardner to get the money down a little bit, let's just go 24 times 5. You're looking at $120 million. So that's clearly a lot of money that's going to be headed Sauce Gardner's way. But I think 4-year deal would make sense for Sauce, as well as for Garrett. Sauce Gardner, as I mentioned, did not have his standard of a season, but still just 24 years old. He'll turn 25 in August. First team All-Pro in each of his first 2 years. He was the Defensive Rookie of the Year. Really solid, damn good football player. And if he's an Aaron Glenn guy, if Glenn really likes him, then yeah, lock him up. Start locking up your core group of guys that you want to build this thing around, and show that if you come in here and you perform and you play at a high level, that you're going to be rewarded, and this is going to be our group that's here for a part of the turnaround. That's how I would shape this if I'm Aaron Glenn, Darren Mushi, and the New York Jets. So it's kind of up to you, right? Like, do you want to do that, or do you want to just continue to ride it out? For Garrett, I think he's the one that I would prioritize to pay first. I think Sauce, you could wait the extra year on, and then you kind of use year 4 to see. They're going to get 5th year options. We'll see if anything else happens. Like Jermaine Johnson's probably going to get a 5th year option, even though he was just hurt in year 3. Breece Hall's entering the last year of his deal. Quincy Williams is entering the last year of his deal and is way underpaid. So I wonder if he's a holdout / new contract option as well this offseason. But I figured I'd start the show by talking about the 2 most polarizing names, the 2 biggest stars on the New York Jets, arguably, and Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner, and the kind of contracts that they could be looking at. And hopefully we see maybe one of them get signed in the next 7 days or so. That'd be exciting. So let's go to your voicemails next. We're going to start with Jim in Maine, and he has an outside the box, I'll call it, thought on the Jets quarterback situation.
Hey, Matt, this is Jim Fudge calling from Maine, not far from New Hampshire on the seacoast. Obviously a former New Yorker, a Long Islander, you can probably tell by my slight accent. But anyway, I just Found your show. I think it's excellent. I think you're doing a
Thank you,
great
man.
job.
I
So keep
appreciate
up
it.
the good work. I want to talk about Zach Wilson, and I think it's a good enough subject for you could probably do an episode on him. So a couple things. Zach, I'm a former quarterback myself. High school, went to West Babylon a long time ago. I'm 63 now, but he had a great season in 2023. It was up and down from a mental aspect, but physically, he had a very good season. You know, he had a couple of signature wins, yada, 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 got a concussion. I think you know what I'm talking about there. But then he gets sent over to Denver, like they did him a favor, like maybe they did him a great favor sending him there because he basically got a checkup from the neck up, which in my opinion is what the kid needed because he's got all the skills. I mean, he's basically, he's in the mold of a Mahomes and a Josh Allen. He really is. He's got the footwork. He can run. He's tough. He can make all the throws. You know, and so I say you can only judge him by his 23 season. You know, before that,
Why?
kid was in a ridiculously bad situation. Nobody was going to do well under those circumstances the first 2 years. So, given that we now have a Denver connection with Muji, and his fiance is from Colts Neck, New Jersey. So, I think the Giants and the Jets. I think there's a story there, you know, because he would fit into a Dable-like offense, right? Who coached Josh Allen. You know, if you know, there's a reason to move back to the area because of his, you know, future wife. You know, I think there's a story there. You know, the question is, did the Jets do him a favor because they, you know, wanted to send him to finishing school, so to speak, under Sean Payton? And they did not burn a bridge, or is that bridge totally burned? In which case, you know, maybe the Giants are interested. You know, they're kind of in the same situation as the Jets. Anyway, interested in your thoughts. Like I said, keep up the great work.
Thank you. I'm going to be honest with you, Jim. I don't see any world where Zach Wilson has any interest in coming back to New York for either the Jets or the New York Giants. I'm not saying that there wasn't talent there coming out of school. There's a reason why he was a top pick in the draft. The athleticism is definitely there. It did not click for him at this level mentally. I think over 3 years he showed that. Even his supposed best year in 2023, he played in really started 12 games. He started 11 games, but it played in 12, and the 12th game was the Rodgers opening night. So Zach played essentially the whole game there. And he threw for 8 touchdown passes, had a 77.2 quarterback rating, a 30.6 QBR. His yards per attempt was 6.2. He took a billion sacks. Now, the offensive line wasn't very good that year, so that played a factor in some of the sacks, but he got into a point where he was holding it for too long and not making good decisions. And I would bet that it's more likely that Zach Wilson is not on the NFL roster next year than it is him coming back to the Jets or to the New York Giants to be in the mix as a option for them at quarterback. I mean, Dable had Daniel Jones, who was supposed to be in the mold of Josh Allen, who could run with his legs and you know, make plays with his arm. And the best year that he got out of him was a 15 touchdown season. So I'm going to politely pass on Zach Wilson. They closed the door. It didn't work. Just like with Rodgers, they closed the door. It didn't work. They're going to find another answer as their bridge quarterback, either Tyrod Taylor or another veteran this offseason. And I think they'll be looking towards the future, likely a year from now, at the quarterback spot. Let's go out to Jay in Jersey. Thanks for the call again, Jim. Welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up, Matt? Just some thoughts on the quarterback situation. I'm just curious what people see in Shadur Sanders that makes him this like top guy. You know, I mean, the stats from last year, he's got some highlights, but it just seems like if you break some stuff down, it just seems like his throwing, like just like his arm talent is subpar, and like athletic ability, like it doesn't seem like it's anything crazy. Like I get the stats. I mean, but besides that, you have like I said, subpar throwing ability. I mean, throwing ability and arm talent, and below average athletic ability, and then this massive overcasting shadow of his father. Like I don't understand the intrigue there. Maybe it is that that he is Deion Sanders' son, but it's just I don't know. I don't know how people could like want him on the Jets, especially with like how bad we've been with picking QBs. Like why you pick somebody from that school with all of those, I guess you could say like negatives. I don't know. It's weird. There's not really a quarterback I love in this class besides honestly Cam Ward, but
Me either.
even there, it's just like I don't know. But hopefully we can get like a younger guy. I called in like last week about Joe Millen. I hope that somehow happens. I doubt it does because it's in the division. But I feel like his upside is a lot higher than some of these guys who are quote unquote top guys in this year's class at the QB position. Another intriguing prospect is Jackson Dart. I would honestly be okay with taking him later rather than like trading up for say Cam Ward or Sanders, which is crazy to me that people are even going to trade up for Sanders. I feel like in any other draft, you'd be, round 2, round 3 guy. I mean, again, great stats here, but just sometimes the level of competition there, and when you break it down, though, like I said, arm talent and all that. But I don't know, man. Let me know what you think. Why there's so much hype there, and hey, man, just want to hear your thoughts on the QB situation. Go get it.
Thank you. On Shador, I mostly agree with what you brought up, but I think the reason why some view him the way that they do is because despite some of the lack of physical tools, he is still produced. Now, granted, it's at Colorado, which is a little bit different, but he took a major step up in competition 2 years ago, right? Going from Jackson State to Colorado, and it worked, and he did really, really well. A concern for me is how involved Deion is going to be in the decisions that the team that drafts him makes. Is there a world where Shador Sanders can come into the NFL and be an NFL quarterback? Of course, I'm never going to say that there's no chance that any of these kids, can't make it under a certain situation. I don't think that's fair. I just don't think the spot for that is in New York and with the Jets, with everything that's gone on recently in like the Rodgers situation, then what happened with Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold. And I think they kind of just need a clean slate and not go with something like major risky like that in year one. Jackson Dart, who you mentioned, I think it's different if you take him in the 3rd round versus if you're having to trade back up for him in round 1 or, God forbid, take him at 7. That's not really something I'm interested in at all because of the expectation that comes with taking a quarterback in the 1st round. I don't think that's fair to him. I don't think he's ready for that. Again, there are some traits that you could fall in love with and like about him, but he needs a lot of work. He has some mechanical flaws in his game that needs to get ironed out. So he's a bit of a project and isn't a perfect thing coming out of school. So that to me is the tough part of this, is figuring out which one of these guys is most NFL ready. And from this class, kind of hard to say the least. Let's go out to Ricky. I haven't heard from Ricky before. Not a question, but he has a comment, and we'll hear him out, and then I'll talk about it.
I have no question, but I have some comments. I have watched about 30 different people on YouTube fantasize being reporters making Jets-oriented materials, and I'm sure there's plenty for all of the other 31 teams also. but you're all really, really amateurish, and you could all be really, really better.
Thank you.
If you would like some help and you would like to be a lot slicker, you can feel free to give me a call. I'm an experienced broadcaster and producer, and I think I could be some help to you. If you want to call me, my name is Ricky. My phone number.
Okay, we're not going to play the phone number on the air. But now, Matt, why would you play that call from Ricky? He's calling you out. Fair question. Right? Totally fair. Not necessarily on the Jets, but I think it's a good opportunity to talk some media literacy, because I think that's a problem in today's day and age. Now, I can't speak for the alleged 29 other people that he's watched in the Jets community. I can only speak for myself, but I do not and have never thought that I am a reporter, nor do I want to be a reporter. In fact, I found that out when I was in school studying journalism in college. I ended up switched and have more of a focus on broadcasting, which helped get me to where I am now and doing what I currently do. I'll put a pin in that thought for a second, but I learned in school that in journalism, you have to essentially, in order to cover a team, you have to give up your fandom, and you're covering it in a non-biased way, right? Like that's how the news and how media is supposed to be in the old school and traditional sense, right? If you're working for a big media company, if I'm working for ABC, ESPN, the Daily News, I'm not a fan covering it. But sports talk is a little bit different. If you listen to sports talk radio on WFAN, ESPN radio with some of their personalities, that is very different. Sports talk versus reporting are two very different things. You would think Ricky would know very well if he is a broadcaster and producer. For myself, I studied broadcasting in college. I ran a radio station locally here on a college campus for 5 years. I taught radio broadcasting, and it still do to this day, for 6 years. I worked with and trained with Mike Quick of MSG Varsity, formerly of MSG Varsity ESPN Radio, Gene Michaels, who was a longtime program director at Walk FM on Long Island and 1010 Wins as an anchor there. And I took what they had to say to heart, and I have tried to implement that into my on-air personality and persona, because I have a lot of respect for them and what they do. I have no interest, Ricky, in talking to you. I respect your opinion that you wanted to call in and share, and maybe that's the case for some people here who maybe they do think that they are a reporter. I do not think that. And sure, there's things that I can improve on. I'm not perfect. Nobody is, but I'm damn proud of what I'm doing, and I have the history with it. I studied it. I didn't just wake up one day and turn a camera on. So hard pass from me, Rick, but thanks for calling in and wasting a minute of my time. Let's go to Joe up next.
Hey, Matt. My name's Joe. I'm calling from New Jersey, right next to MetLife over here. I wanted to see what your thoughts were about the new cap space that we have here, and that now that we can have some more options in free agency, do you think it'd be a good idea for us to trade back into the first round after using our number 7 pick to pick up more draft capital and fill more holes? Love the channel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe. With the cap space, I did a video, last week, on the cap space and how they could open up even more cap for themselves. And I don't think they're going to spend huge money in free agency. I think they'll try to fill some needs. I could see them signing a safety as a starter. I could see them signing interior defensive lineman. Maybe they sign a linebacker, but I don't think they're throwing like big money at T. Higgins to come in here. I don't think they're throwing big money at like Sam Darnold. Not that he would come back here anyway, but you get my drift. When I originally listened to this, I thought the question was on the Jets trading back, which in general, trading back from 7 I do think is something that would interest me if a team is willing to move up. And what are they moving up for is really my question on why I don't think it's crazy likely. But I don't think the Jets should then, like, let's say, package second, third round picks and future assets in order to get back into the first round to take someone else. I'm more of a fan of trading down from 7 to accumulate more capital than I am giving up, multiple day 2 picks. Let's say it's your second and third and trying to get back up into the first round. I'm comfortable with where the Jets are in round number 2. I'm okay with where they are in round number 3. I think there are some needs that they need to fill out in the mid rounds. Like, you need to find some depth on the defensive line. You need to find a tight end, maybe a safety in that range. And I think if you're packaging all these picks together to get up and get one more guy, I worry if you're going to be able to fill all of your holes through both free agency and the draft. So I wouldn't trade back into round 1. I'm open to trading back from 7, but not necessarily in the trade back into the first round. I don't think that's something that they will do. But we'll see. Maybe Darren Muji feels differently. Peter from Hudson Valley is next.
Hey, Matt. It's Peter calling from the beautiful Hudson Valley on this late Sunday evening. Calling in to talk about the Combine coming this week. And some thoughts on your recent videos. And again, I'll say thank you, as always, for letting me call in and contribute. Obviously, I saw your most recent videos in regards to players the Jets should be targeting and the trade options. And I like a lot of the names there, especially if the Jets somehow could get Dre Greenlaw, especially if Jamie Sherwood was not going to return to them this year, and they need, obviously, a C.J. Mosley replacement. So my hope is at least that Muji and Glenn and the rest of the staff don't just necessarily look at players from Denver and Detroit and New Orleans, like Wilkes from Carolina and San Francisco, and they cast a pretty wide net to find best scheme fits and, best talent available at reasonable prices, even though the salary cap, of course, is increasing, to fill needs, in free agency before we get to the draft. But speaking of the draft, since the Combine is this week, I just wanted to ask if you have any names or any players that you're interested in at any position of need for the Jets, besides just quarterbacks, of course, and what names you want to keep an eye on during the Combine. So just be curious about that as we start to, stack the off season as we usually do and build, hopefully, the best team we can in 2025. I still think it's going to be the type of team that once you add a decent enough quarterback in and enough talent around said quarterback that, they can still win, like I said, 7, 8, maybe even 9 games on the outside. So we're definitely not punting on 2025. We just got to get all the right players and all the right pieces in place. So hopefully let me know your thoughts on the Combine and who to look for. And as always, go Jets.
Thank you so much for the call, Peter. Always love hearing from you and that voice from up in the beautiful Hudson Valley. I'll give you a few names at different positions, both kind of, or all kind of earlier in the draft. So there's been some reports or rumors about the Jets looking at offensive line in round 1, and with the likelihood of Morgan Moses not coming back at this point, according to the reports from Connor Hughes, Will Campbell and Calvin Banks' name has come up a lot. Now, I wouldn't take Calvin Banks at 7, but Will Campbell, I think, would be in play at 7. So there's not really a specific drill I'm looking for, but arm length is something that I think has some value for these tackles. Some people think Will Campbell is better suited at guard, but I think depending on how he measures out, and what percentile his arms are would dictate whether he can play left tackle or right tackle. I think it would be interesting to talk to Will Campbell to see if I'm the Jets, I would be gauging how comfortable does he feel about going to play a right tackle. Are we going to get another I'm a left tackle answer, or is he going to say I'd be more than willing to come in and play right tackle? I played right tackle in high school, or like whatever. I practiced it for 3 years at LSU. Like, we don't know. I would be really interested in finding that out. Will Johnson, I don't think the Jets necessarily go corner, but you could argue that cornerback 2 is a need, and maybe that the Jets just view him as the best player available when he's picked. For me, I'm interested in his 40 time. I want to see if he has the speed, the straight line speed to keep up with some of these fast receivers at the next level. And if he tests well, like Sauce Gardner tested well, he ran a better 40 time than people were expecting. That was like the last check mark because the tape's good, but sometimes some of these numbers, if you don't test well, it could have an impact. Like if he was closer to like a 4.5 40, then you're going, oh, like, do we feel comfortable with him as an outside corner at the next level? I don't know. And also for 40 times, 2 wide receivers that I'm heavily interested in, Tet McMillan, a round 1 guy, Jack Besh, more of a second round option for the New York Jets, both bigger receivers, which I think complement Garrett Wilson well, which is why they're 2 names that I'm interested in because I'm not just going, oh, give me the best guy. Like, yes, best player available is important, but also at the same time, you want to make sure they fit what you're looking for. I think Tet and Jack Besh, they need to run around 4.5 for me to feel excited about them. If they drop to in the 4.6s or below, then I think you might have some people maybe sour on both of those guys. So those are some names for me I'm watching during Combine Week. I'm curious to see if we hear like the Jets spoke to blah, 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 or they really like to see this. Combine's fun for all those rumors. Last one, we go to our buddy PG from out on Long Island. He wants to talk some trade up for the New York Jets.
Hello, Matt O'Leary. PG from Long Island here. Thank you for taking my call. I want to talk about the draft today. I listened to your YouTube mock draft today, and a couple things on that. One, you hadn't taken Kyle McCord from Syracuse. I've heard a lot of reports where the Jets are looking for somebody more mobile. I know I've talked about Kirk Cousins, if he's healthy, being a good, bridge quarterback, and he's not mobile. But the difference is, I think the Jets, if they draft somebody here, they're looking for somebody, more long-term, a long-term project, if not a long-term solution. So I'll get your thoughts on that, whether the Kyle McCord actually fits that. The other thing is, looking at the draft, picking number 7, there are a lot of good players that are going to be available if we stick at 7. You have the 2 quarterbacks, which, I don't think we're going to get it. I'm not sure if we want. You have the stud edge rusher from Penn. You have the wide receiver from Arizona. You have that freak athlete, cornerback and wide receiver, 2-way player. You have the offensive lineman, the stud lineman from Michigan, and there's another cornerback, and there's a safety. So maybe even one of these other quarterbacks kind of climb up the draft board, and they're in play at that point. My point is this: we could stick and get a good player, but one of these players might be a target for somebody to actually trade up to us and have us move back in the draft, as they did in your mock draft today. And I think that would be a win as well. So I think we're in a pretty good situation there. My question here is to you. Now, this is Monday night that I'm calling. Muji and Glenn are talking tomorrow. Maybe they'll give a little information as to what they're thinking. Probably not. But my question to you still is, what do you think the chances are we actually trade up in the draft? And if we love that defensive lineman in Michigan, who obviously I think is just a perfect fit for the Jets, or maybe one of the quarterbacks, gets into a position where we could make a trade up and they actually love them, or whoever. You think there's a chance we actually move up? Anyway, that's my question. And as always, Matt O'Leary, go Jets.
Good question, as always, PG. I appreciate you rounding us out here, as usual, on the back end of the show. Now, maybe my read is totally off, and it surprises me on draft day, and we do see Darren Muji trade up. He did say yesterday that they're open to trade up and trade down. I would, if you had to ask me, are they more likely to trade up or trade down? I would think trade down. There has been some buzz recently about the Jets trading up. maybe it's my own bias creeping in because I don't feel crazy strong about this quarterback class. And I just personally wouldn't, as much as I love Mason Graham, I do. I really like him as a player. If the Jets drafted him, I'd be psyched. I'm not giving up the capital to move up 3 picks to take Mason Graham if I could sit and take a Ted McMillan or Tyler Warren or whoever else at 7th overall. I wouldn't. Because I think this year, and something I've said a lot this offseason, so I apologize if I sound like a broken record, but I think there's a lot of routes you could argue that the Jets should go. So I don't think they necessarily need to pigeonhole themselves into going, oh, well, like we have this guy, like Mason Graham circled in red ink, and it's Mason Graham no matter what, Malachi Corley style, and we got to trade up and get him. I think you kind of let the board fall as it may, and then attack for who's available and who fits what you need the most. So that would be my approach personally on it. I don't think there's a very strong likelihood that they are trading up, but you never know. The rumors have been floating out there recently. Guys, I appreciate you. I'm Matt O'Leary. Make sure to subscribe if you are new to the show, whether it's on podcast form or on YouTube. Let me know. I'm Matt O'Leary. I'll catch you next time.